Hey, it's Greg Brown. Pull out your logbook because it's time for Flying Carpet Podcast Flight number 3, Old Pals and End Numbers. For those who don't know me, I wrote the long-running Flying Carpet Aviation Adventure column in a national pilot magazine. I've authored a number of popular aviation books, including The Savvy Flight Instructor, The Turbine Pilot's Flight Manual, and Flying Carpet, The Soul of an Airplane. I'm also known for my fine art aerial photography, which has been widely published and exhibited, and for pilot plaques celebrating your aviation accomplishments. Among other honors, I was the 2000 National Flight Instructor of the Year, and I'm a former Barnes & Noble Arizona Author of the Month. The Flying Carpet is a 4-place single-engine Cessna 182 light airplane. In it, for over 20 years, my wife Jean and I have traveled the North American continent, searching behind clouds for the real America, and experiencing aerial adventures like today's all along the way. Learn more at my website, gregbrownflyingcarpet.com, and join me on social media by searching Greg Brown Flying Carpet. Before we take off on today's flight, I'd like to explain something that may not be familiar to non-pilots and listeners from outside the United States. As you know, the title of this episode is Old Pals and N Numbers. N numbers are the registration numbers painted on the outside of airplanes, and by which they're identified on the radio. The N is actually the symbol of aircraft registered in the United States. Canadian aircraft registrations, for example, begin with the letter C. Okay, armed with that, we're ready to go. Hop aboard my Flying Carpet. Buckle your seatbelts and prepare for takeoff on today's adventure. Old Pals and N Numbers. Clear prop.
Cessna 502, this is Los Angeles Center. The Blythe, California altimeter setting is 29908.
We used to fly a plane with a similar N number, I observed to my wife Jean upon hearing the transmission. Remember? Was it with Skyview Flyers out of Indianapolis, she asked. No, I'm thinking of a Cessna 172 from the University of Illinois Flying Club, back when you and I were dating. We often flew it back and forth to Indianapolis after you transferred to Butler University. We trailed the airplane eastbound through LA Center airspace, and with each new radio call I was reminded of another adventure in the 502 I used to fly. The number I remember from those days is 068, said Jean. Which airplane was that one? Oh, you mean 98068, the Cherokee 140 with the trim crank and the ceiling. We flew that one often because it was the cheapest Flying Illini Club airplane to rent. But we flew 502 plenty also. That aroused memories of other airplanes and N numbers from the past. The toughest call sign I've ever encountered was November 38383. It belonged to a nice Piper Turbo Aero, but every call-up required 3 or 4 tries before air traffic control could get the number straight. Center, I'd say, this is Aero 38383.
38833?
No, 38383.
Is that 33833?
No, sir, 38383. So it would go with each new controller. It was maddening, especially on instrument flights where every communication counts. Then there was 59751, the corporate Piper Navajo twin I used to fly. That moniker was almost as challenging as 38383, at least until I mastered 59751 at just the right cadence. Along with happy adventures, 751 delivered me landing gear problems, gyro failures, out-of-spec trim, and a runaway autopilot. You'll hear more about that in a future episode. Did I ever mention tracing Richard Halliburton's N number? I asked Jean. You know, for the original flying carpet, he and Moy Stevens flew to Timbuktu in 1931? I don't think so, said Gene. Halliburton was a popular adventurer, author, and syndicated travel columnist back in the 1920s and 30s. After hitching around the world by freighter and camel in the 1920s, he became obsessed with visiting remote Timbuktu, the legendary mid-Sahara caravan stop. The best way to get there, he decided, was via the Flying Carpet, a black and crimson Stearman biplane he bought and shipped to England for that purpose in 1931. With pilot Moy Stevens guiding the Stearman, Halliburton traveled the world to exotic places such as Baghdad, the Dead Sea, Headhunter Country in Borneo, and yes, Timbuktu. During the course of his journey, he enthralled princes and paupers alike by treating them to their first airplane rides. You know, it's tempting to look back at those times and think we missed the real adventure of flying. Well, we didn't. Flying was out of reach for all but the wealthiest people in Halliburton's day, so most people could enjoy flying only vicariously through his writing and radio broadcasts. Today we live exploits that most of Halliburton's followers could only dream of, piloting our own flying machines on our own adventures. Now you know why Gene's and my flying carpet was inspired by Halliburton's Stearman. Anyway, back to our story. So, Gene, a woman wrote me last year asking if Halliburton's original flying carpet still exists. I found the N number in an old magazine article. It was an NX number, actually, and I looked it up in the FAA database minus the X, which of course is no longer used. To my astonishment, that number was registered to a Stearman just across Phoenix. Was it the original flying carpet? Asked Gene. No, I knew right away it wasn't because the listed Stearman was a 1940 model, built 9 years after Halliburton's travels. But I figured the owner must know something, so I wrote him. Turned out he was a Halliburton fan too, so upon buying a surplus military Stearman in 1960, he'd registered it under the Adventurer's original N number. He sent me an article detailing the demise of the original flying carpet. Apparently it was destroyed in a crash following Halliburton's return after someone rigged the controls backwards. Anyway, the woman who raised the question proved to be Halliburton's grandniece. She actually remembered meeting the guy when she was a little girl. Only you, Greg, could get excited about a 75-year-old N number, even if it was from the original flying carpet, said Gene. Before I could conjure up a snappy comeback, our radio crackled to life.
Cessna 502, contact Albuquerque Center on 125.25.
Just for the heck of it, I said to Gene, switching frequencies on our secondary radio to monitor the other aircraft's sign-on. For a time, all was silent. Then,
Albuquerque Center, Cessna 12502, checking in BFR at 7,500.
That's it, I said to Gene. 12502. Do you realize how long it's been since we last flew that airplane? Like fond memories of long-ago lovers, beloved airplanes resurface occasionally from quiet corners of a pilot's mind. We hear the last 3 digits of some familiar N number and are flooded with reminiscences. But rarely do the abbreviated call signs used in routine communications fully match the numbers of actual steeds we once flew, especially when 1,500 miles and 30 years have passed under the wings. We were approaching the Arizona border and soon would be handed off to join our old friend on Albuquerque Center frequency. I'm going to ask those guys about 502 when we switch over, I said to Gene. We crossed Blythe, California, and then the Colorado River, but our radio remained silent. Radio check, I transmitted to LA Center, thinking maybe they needed a hint.
Loud and clear,
came the reply, but still no frequency change. Subconsciously, I drummed my fingers on the glare shield. What's with you? Asked Gene, annoyed. Those guys are further ahead than I thought. I hope they don't go off frequency, I said, retrieving my IFR chart. Darn, we're still 24 miles from Albuquerque's airspace. I requested a temporary frequency change from LA Center, then radioed Albuquerque. If Cessna 12502 is still on frequency, I pleaded, please ask them to radio me on air-to-air frequency. To my delight, I soon received a call from 502's pilot. I hope you don't mind me asking, I said, but where are you folks based? I used to fly that plane.
Champaign, Illinois.
Wow. Is it still owned by the Flying Illini?
Indeed it is.
Does the club still have Cherokee 908068? There was also a Skylane when I was there, Cessna 71051.
3 airplanes? No, 502 is the only one we have now.
Old 502 carries lots of memories for me, I told him. I piloted it as a club member back in the 70s. Sitting here beside me is the girl I dated in that airplane, and I once flew it to the Bahamas with my college roommates.
You flew this thing all the way to the Bahamas?
Sure did. I still have a photo of my buddies and me with that airplane at Marsh Harbour International Airport on Great Abaco Island. You're a long way from home yourself. Where are you headed? We're bound from Orange County to Phoenix.
We're returning home from Medford, Oregon, with a stop tonight at Alamogordo, New Mexico.
I was about to counter with my own, you flew that plane all the way to Oregon, when LA Center rattled my other radio. Gotta go, I said. You folks have a safe flight. I'm Greg.
Sure will. You fly safely too. I'm Jonathan.
10 minutes of reminiscing had made us pals, having shared the same pilot seat some 30 years apart. All the way from Illinois to Oregon in a Skyhawk? Or to the Bahamas with a plane load of college roomies? We pilots would never forget such adventures, nor the trusty steed that took us there. Cessna 502, may we meet again someday. Okay, friends. Can you believe we get to do this? Look forward to more flying carpet adventures in the future. They only get better. If you enjoyed this podcast, I hope you'll check out my popular book, Flying Carpet, The Soul of an Airplane, filled with such stories. Says Nina Bell Allen of Reader's Digest, you don't have to be a pilot or even a frequent flyer to soar with Greg Brown and his Flying Carpet. Also at gregbrownflyingcarpet.com, learn about my other popular aviation books, The Savvy Flight Instructor, The Turbine Pilot's Flight Manual, Job Hunting for Pilots, and You Can Fly. There you'll also discover my views from the Flying Carpet aerial photography, available in fine art prints, and pilot achievement plaques, perfect gifts for celebrating your favorite aviator's piloting accomplishments. Finally, I invite you to follow my social media sites, most of which can be found by searching Greg Brown Flying Carpet. Search GB Flying Carpet on Twitter. And consider joining my Student Pilot Pep Talk group on Facebook. Thanks again for joining me on today's Cockpit Adventure. Music for this podcast is by Hannes Brown. See you next time.